This is the fourth tutorial in my little series about working with Gmax to make models for Trainz railsim, and in this session what I want to do is to explain what I seek to achieve when I'm editing meshes. And if we just look at the size of that, this is the wheel, the standard wheel that is going to form part of the bogey, and we look at the poly count, 2,500, and in fact we're already over the, or getting close to the budget which is preset by the Trainz plugin, Trainz game pack plugin. So we want to reduce that drastically, and at the moment if I look at, for example, that wheel there, that tube, it actually comprises of 320 polys, and each of these spokes comprise 220, so we want to reduce that dramatically. And once I've done that, then the wheel will be I'll texture the wheel as I do it, and so that will cover texturing as well as reducing the poly count. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you here that I've got a couple of textures ready, my standard frames texture, and then I've got shiny frames, just a shiny version of that. Saddle tank was the one showing the saddle tank, so let's see if I can I think that'll do it. Yes, there's the saddle tank, and the saddle tank itself is 804 polys, so I'm going to have to do something about that, and that will include not just reducing it from a extruded editable spline, which has also had some of the mesh edited, but also I'll be removing some of the polys from inside, because I just won't need them when the boiler goes in, because that will be butting up against the inside of that. And from looking at the plans, the boiler and the saddle tank are the same length, so in fact I'll be able to lose both some parts. If I go into wireframe, you'll see what I mean. A lot of these faces can be deleted because they're just not seen when you're looking at the model, and that will save a lot. Now obviously I'll have to keep some of these because I'm just going to put a circle. The boiler will be a tube going, or not a tube, a cylinder going in there, so that will save both faces from inside the saddle tank and from the outside of the boiler where they just join up. So let me just hide that again. This is a really important process because it's in this way that you can make your model suitable for running in Trainz, so it doesn't give a massive memory hit to your running Trainz, to your sim when you're running on your PC. Your graphics card could get hammered. So first of all, then let's start doing something with these spokes. Now I've already copied these several times until I got them right, and I'm going to copy them again because frankly at the moment it's well, it's an ellipse, an extruded ellipse, 220. So let's first of all just reduce that, collapse it down to an editable poly, 86. So that's much more acceptable. And there's a couple there that I can lose because the end of each of these spokes is hard against this inner part of the wheel, the red. So the face that is on the end of these spokes can be deleted. So to do that, I'm going to edit the poly, and here it is up here, and it should show me that it's up the top. There we are, look, it's that top. Let's just go into this, highlight this, and it's that top one there, which is completely hidden when the model is finished. So I can just delete that. So it only takes one poly out from 86 down to 85, but every single poly is important. And the more of these that you can take out, then the more detail you can leave elsewhere in the model. And that's the other one. I just clicked on that there, look. and I'll delete that. So now I've got it down from 220 to 84. It still means the bogey, when it's finished, is still going to be quite big, but you're going to load it separately anyway. It's going to be a separate model in itself. So long as that overall bogey doesn't bust the budget, then you're okay. So I'm going to use frames to texture this, and you can see it immediately takes on the characteristic of the frames. Texture, that's the reflection. So that's the frames texture itself behind the, and I'm just going to reduce, I've selected it all, and I just want to select what I think is a sort of a reasonable sort of, that's why I've got all these greys and mottles and that sort of thing, and I tend to make these fairly dark. Maybe that's a bit too dark. It was over here, wasn't it? So these are quite random, these effects, but I found that they make a good palette. GWR green, and for the lining up here, that's for making the springs, giving the texture to the springs, and it's a small texture which actually achieves quite a bit. So I'm quite happy with that as a spoke. And what I'm going to do now is what I did before, which is essentially just clone it around the circle. And I'm going to do that by taking the ones which I'm going to replace. These are just here for positioning, and I'm going to just move those along out the way, because I'm just going to use the clone this and then rotate it by minus 2571. And I can do that again. I can just clone it, and this time instead of a minus, just make it a positive 25.71, and that's those two dealt with, so I can delete those. The next two are 5142 minus first 51.42, and then I suppose I could clone that one just to make life a bit easier, and just take away the minus sign. There we are, and that's those two. And then this one is 77.2, so we'll do the first one, clone 77.2, just 2, 77.2, there we are, and then clone that one again, just take away the minus sign, okay, and delete those two. And you can see the numbers beginning to drop in the polygon counts, which is what we want. And then we have all of those spokes. Now obviously the center of the spoke is going to be hidden by the by all the fittings around the axle. Now the next area that I can save polys in is on the interior, this interior element. And what I'm going to do is take away all of the faces. Let's just make that a bit bigger so you can see my logic here. I'm going to take away all of the exterior faces around the outer faces there, not these side ones, but the ones that are butted up against this colour, this purpley colour, because they're going to be hidden by that purpley colour. So therefore I can save a lot of polys there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it big. I'm just going to make it from 100% to 1000%. There it is, massive. Put on the wireframe, and I just find this more convenient. And then it's a tube at the moment with 320 polys. You can see all those steps around to make the curve. Convert that to an editable poly, and it comes down to 160. And then selecting the polys, just got to take your time doing this, making sure you get the correct ones selected, because otherwise if you're not careful you can delete ones that you want to keep. And that's why I blow it up to this sort of size, because then rather than trying to peer into a small bit of the mesh, this way I can examine those awkward bits of mesh and really make them just take out those pieces that I want to remove without the chance of picking up, say, that sort of a side or on the other side there. So these are the ones I'm losing. And there's still a few more to go. So let's take those out. There we are, and we're down to 120, which is not bad considering that I'm making these wheels really quite nice smooth circles, rather than, you know, you're offered 18 faces when you first draw a tube. And then the only thing I've got to do then is just to return it to 100%. And let's just have a look at that. Make sure I haven't made an awful gaff. No, it looks okay. And let's give it a good old frames treatment. And I'm going to colour the whole thing pretty much the same. Now I use this area here for the spokes, so I'm going to use this area for this part of the wheel. And we'll see about how that looks. Doesn't look too bad at all. Yep, that's okay. So again, we've lost a few polys here. Now this one, the actual wheel itself, another 320 poly tube. So first of all, what I want, excuse me, what I want to do here is to, well, I want to clone it, but not in that direction. I want to take it off to here, because this is going to form the outer edge. There is the tyre of the wheel, the surface that actually touches the rail, and I want that nice and shiny. So I'm going to make sure first of all this is centered. Yeah, I've got that fully centered, so I know that the other one is as well. And now I'm going to edit the mesh, and I'm going to take it out by, rather than go around deleting polys, because I only want the outer circle, I only want that outer bit. I don't want the sides, and I don't want the inner bit, because it's only that outer face which actually touches the rail, at least you'd like to hope so. And so just go around picking up points. I'm holding down the control key while I'm doing this, so that it will build up a selection. And you know, I don't know if there's a quicker way of doing this, probably is, but this is the way I find most reliable, and you know, it's what works which is important, I think, and so you know what you're doing. And one more, there we are. So remember, it's 320 at the moment, take it down, it's 81. Oh, we still got one there, even less, 80. An odd number always should always ring a few alarm bells. And you can see there that all that's left is that outer face. And if I now reduce that to a editable poly, it halves that number down to 40. So that's quite good. And this time I'm going to use shiny frames, and because I want this to be a sort of shiny rail surface, I'm going to use this little light grey up the top here. And it's shiny in the sense that, unlike the ordinary frames texture, to which I give a slight reflection, 5%, this one's got a 30% reflection, which I found through mucking about is probably about the best. So that's I now need to take away the outer edge of my actual wheel itself, the tyre. There we are, the tyre's edge faces which actually touch the rail. So I'm taking that up 1000%. There we are, nice and big, I can't miss this. Put it into wireframe, select it, 320 again, remember. Take it down to editable poly, it's 160. And now I'm going to select polys and delete them. And what I'm deleting are all the ones that are going to be replaced by the one I've just created, which is the shiny face of the wheel, the face of the tyre that actually runs on the rail. And you might think, well, this is a lot of palaver for not much. but it creates a better effect, I find, if you do take the time and make these make the meshes like this. This is my favourite way of doing it, and I mean, I'm sure there's probably a quicker way and a better way of doing it. This way I know is reliable. It's what I've done for all my wheels, and it means that I end up with quite a decent size. Well, we've still got 120 there, editable poly. So now we're just going to take it down to the 100%. There it is. Let's have a look at what it actually looks like, which is pretty weird because it's missing all of that outer face. Okay, so let's give it a texture, and it's the frames texture rather than the shiny frames texture, and I'm just going to take it down. I might change this, but I'm just going to take it down to something like that. I think that might be a reasonable colouring, and also because it's not just a plain colour, you get a bit of variation in it, then it does give you, the appearance of an actual wheel turning. And then this one, which is its tire, its outer edge rather, I just want to centre back on it. There we are. So we've created a wheel with the spokes and with a shiny surface end. Obviously the next bit that I need to do is this shiny surface here. This is the actual flange. Now what I do with the flange is I save polys, and if you look closely at any of the bogies that I've done, you'll see that I've deliberately done that in order to save polys. And one of the things here that I'm just looking at is, yes, now this tube here has the same internal diameter of the main part of the wheel. In other words, this part of the wheel, not this inner part, which stands indented, is indented inside, slightly narrower than the actual wheel itself, than the outer part, the tyre part of the wheel. And you can see here it's just a tube, so that means I've got a lot of polys there. In fact, we've got the same number. We're back up to 320. And what I'm going to do here is a bit of cheating really, because this is really, the flange should be like this, should have a bit of thickness to it. But what I do is I take it to a point around the outer edge, which means I can lose all of those polys. It just reduces the hit on the graphics card. Okay, so this means it's got to be a little bit more complex. In fact, I'm going to split it up into into two pieces, and also I'm going to be altering the part of the wheel itself to do this. So let me just take a copy of this and move it over out the way. Okay, so this face really has got to be the part of the flange that touches the inside of a rail occasionally. Gives you that characteristic noise as it goes by. And so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to create this part here, this face here. On its outer edge it's got to lean into this point here. So my first job is just to get some position. So what I need to know is that it's minus 3 inches 506. So I'm going to write that down, minus 3.506 inches. Okay, I've got that written down. And my next job is to, I'm looking down from above here. I think it will become obvious as I do it. So there we are. So let's go back into that and let's take out those vertices. And now, so we've just got that one face, or those faces, that ring of faces there. And again, I just need to select just those ones I want to have leaning back, which is the outer vertices. going around the circle here just to pick them up fairly quickly. Make sure I get them all. Just the outer ones though, not the inner ones. You just got to be careful as you're picking them up. Just be cautious. Okay, and we've got 3.006, so I'm going to move those to 5. Now if we look at it, it's actually leaning back a tad. You can see there, if I go right in, you can see it's leaning back, and I'm going to reduce it to its an editable poly, so we come down to 40 and give it that same shiny frames effect, which I made earlier. Okay, so that should now, if I click it back into position here, there we are. If I use that to center it, now it's obscured by this one, which I haven't altered yet, the copy of it, so I'm going to move that just in the y-axis. Thank you. Stop fucking me about. There we are. Okay, so we've got that, but what we've also got at the back here is, well, we haven't got any back, so that's why we just need this one. So again, let's go into this, and this time we want to keep the back, so edit mesh, zoom in a bit, we just take that front bit off, and now we're left with this piece here. You can see there's nothing on that side, just this piece, which is going to go on the back. So, and for this one, again, reduce it down to an editable poly, and I'm going to use frames to texture it, and I'm going to put really dark coloration on that back, because it's the inside of the wheel, mostly hidden by the frames. Let's just take that and center it over there. There we are. It gives us the back of the wheel. So we've saved quite a lot of polys on making that wheel. In fact, a considerable number of polys making that wheel. And in fact, most of the polys that we've got here in this are from the saddle tank, I think. Let's have a look. No, 948. So it's an eighth. Now it's going to make 6 times that, of course, so 5,500 eventually. But there are more polys that we can lose. Because we've got that flange there, and these are all separate polys, and because we've got that flange there, what we can do now is zoom in at the side of the wheel, which we've already done a fair bit of pruning with it, and we can take the vertices here, which at the moment they're standing proud of that flange. We want to move them to 3.5. Actually, it's 3.506, isn't it? That's better. Let's have a look at that. So there they all are, and they're lying on top of the piece that we've just done. So that's no good. So we've got to sort that out. And again, I'm going to take this up to 1000%, just to give me an easy way of seeing it. There we are. So this is our wheel at the moment, and this outer part of the tire is in shiny frames. It's a separate part of the mesh. Here's the front and the inside. We don't need this side. So if we go into wireframe mode and we select polys, we can just pick up all of these polys nice, and it's worth checking each one in turn to make sure you're getting exactly what you want, because and I've done this, you know, it really is depressing when you get so far into a model and you suddenly find there's a lump missing out of the wheel which shouldn't have been missing, and you have to redo it all. And delete. Yes, no isolated vertices please. And we're down to 80 there, and we just need to reduce that back down to 100%. Okay, and now let's just see that. So that's the basis of our wheel, and it's looking fine. So if I go into top-down view, I should be able to pick up everything, okay, without picking up anything out of any of the plans or anything like that, just the wheel itself. And I'm going to group that just for the mo, and it's 908, so that's going to be much more manageable. If I just unhide everything, you'll see we've got almost, well, we've got over 800 polys in the saddle tank, and in the cab, which is grouped together, that's where most of those 8,000 are coming from, 6,280. But we're not going to be we're only going to use that in order to make the cab interior for this locomotive. We're just going to crib stuff from that. Okay, so that's all well and good, and we seem to be doing okay. So we've got the one wheel there, so the next thing that we need to do is to put it to gauge. So this is our top-down view, so let's give it a gauge of 4 for 8.5. That's what we want. So over here, 4 for 8.5, and make sure we're centered and position that correctly. Okay, and then just move it up a bit, I think. And let's have a look here. And so if we move the wheel out and move it out until our flange, still not right there, is it? Our flange is in the correct place. So I'm going to need to check that again and rework on that. But it does give you an idea on how much you can reduce the poly count, and it's really important that you do so. And that's where I'm going to leave the tutorial for this particular tutorial and come back to the wheel in the next one. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please do subscribe, please send questions or comments, and look out for the next tutorial.